bottom. They can't put any pressure on that false bottom, but they can work in that area as if they're walking on the bottom. They're not walking on it, as if they're dealing on the bottom there and eating critters that are dealing with like tadpoles and that sort of thing that are out there in that region. And so this is where I would expect these things to be found. And guess what? Tiktaalik is found in the same sediments as the oldest plants. Acanthostega and the others that are similar to it are found in the Devonian, the same area where you find these plants. And these plants are exactly where you'd expect them in the ecological sequence. They're transitional between two plant groups because they're sitting ecologically between two plant groups, which are sitting where they are because of their ecological design. So actually, every single stratomorphic intermediate, or what I call an evolutionary intermediate, is explained by this theory as well from the Paleozoic. There's nothing to explain in the Paleozoic left in terms of that. So the pre-flood floating forest ecosystem explains the Paleozoic plant sequence, the sequence of plants in the Paleozoic. It explains all the Paleozoic stratomorphic intermediates. It pulls in two other theories, two other smaller theories, which explain the origin of coal and the weird anatomy of the plants. It explains the youth of the coal, the marine sediments associated with everything here, the largely extinct nature of the plants and animals, and the coal biomass and distribution, both geographically and stratigraphically, in the record. So it has extraordinary explanatory power. A good theory should also be one that makes predictions and one that is heuristic, that brings, that spawns new ideas, further research. I didn't put that in here, but from this we'd predict various things about the critters that we find in the Mazon Creek, for example, the critters we're finding in here. Basically, the ecology of this entire ecosystem, you can begin to make predictions about what you'd expect there that have already been verified in a variety of ways in talks that I've been at Geological Society of America, and probably in a couple of weeks some more will be verified in further talks there. Also, the research I'm interested in pursuing is this ecosystem probably had associated with it, I have to think there was associated with it underneath and about it, a microflora, basically bacteria that lived in association with it, probably having a lot to do with what could have been maybe, for example, taking salt water and making it fresh, is something that bacteria can do, and also processing the organic matter that's associated with this to make this a self-sustaining, continuing ecosystem. I would suggest there's an incredible microflora associated with it. During the flood, when this is being destroyed, I would expect that the microflora, some of it would actually enjoy this. It's like the flood is, yee-haw! I've been waiting for this. I mean, where most organisms are getting killed and are being destroyed, the nutrients supplied by organisms being chewed up and being distributed in the water, and all sorts of iron and minerals that are usually limitations to biological productivity being put into the system. I would think that there would be algal blooms, I mean algal in the sense of Monera bacterium blooms, that are associated with this, that wherever this floating forest floated, I would expect this, this chemistry and biology to float with it. And I suspect this is an explanation for the black, not only the black shales, which are associated with these things, but also the black limestones. And I suspect it's the origin of the black limestones in the Pennsylvanian. I also expect that the floating of this thing back and forth is the explanation for the cyclothems, which is a geologic phenomenon you've got only associated with the Carboniferous. And so it goes. There's a lot of implications that come out of this. Unfortunately, I don't have any time to pursue any of them, but this is an example of a theory in creationism. I've given you a summary of how it came to be, how it very quickly assumed its own, sort of grew on its own, began to subsume other theories and explain more and more, and it is still a very productive heuristically valuable theory which makes a variety of predictions. There's a whole bunch of research which could be worked off of this for years to come. So there's that. How did I do? Ooh, a little bit over on that. Well, I got 2 minutes for questions. Any questions?
What's the ratio? I've read this number sometime past. What's the ratio live plant matter necessary to create a given coal? How many?
10 to 1. It's a 10 to 1 ratio. 10 feet of plant material for 1 foot of coal. So for example, right now, most of your coal, most of the coal being, let's say, the Wisconsin power plant, which is an enormous power plant, it's got 3 coal trains a day going into that plant. Each coal train has 88 cars. Each car has 88 tons of coal on it. Okay, 3 of those a day. They're all coming from the Williston Basin coal seam. And there's a 300-foot coal seam there, an average 300 feet. That's 3,000 feet of plant material, which would be required to produce that 300-foot coal seam. So it's a 10 to 1. And when you add up all of the coals in the eastern U.S., western Europe area, I think the total is something on the order of about 150 feet. So we've got about 1,000, 1,500 feet of plant material required to produce that coal. That's just, for all practical purposes, I'm going to say, first approximation, that's just the bark from the trees in the center of the floating forest. That's a lot of plant material. That's why I say it is a continent-sized forest. Yes, sir.
Aren't there any common names for those?
You mean you didn't recognize any of those names? Let's see. Ferns, Phyllocopsida, are the lowermost group. Let's see. Cycads. There are some cycads in the present. I don't think that is their common name. There aren't very many species left of them, but cycads. Let's see.